Police officers of Reddit, who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered? I worked with this one guy who had a lengthy record. He had a system for getting released if he got caught. After committing a crime, if the police were in pursuit and he knew he was about to be cornered, he would act insane. His girl would play along with it, telling the police that he was off his medication. The police would arrest him, but then send him to a mental ward with papers instructing the ward to release to police once he was cleared. Once he was in the mental ward, he would cause a distraction that would make the person attending the desk with the file cabinet to leave said cabinet. He would then crawl to the file cabinet, look for his release to police papers, and then would literally eat the papers. When the psycho-evaluators decided that he was stable enough to be released, there would be no instructions to send him to the police, and he would be released to the general public. He did this about 10 times until police officers noticed him back on the streets. This stunt forced the state to change their procedure for detaining mentally unstable suspects. My favorite was the guy who stole a post office mailbox off the street, repainted it, and then put it next to the night deposit box at a bank, and hang an out of order sign on the deposit box. All the businesses came along and dropped off their deposits in the mailbox. A guy I went to high school had been stealing from Walmart in a pretty clever way. He would grab video games, MP3 players, beer, etc. and throw them all in a trash can in the garden section. The workers never checked the trash contents, and he would just wait, sometimes 5 hours, until they emptied the trash in the back dumpster and hop in to get his items. Once he took a cardboard box from display inside, filled it with video games, a PS3 and extra controllers. He grabbed some tape and pens and drew all over the box and taped it up to make it look used and tossed it. An hour later, he had a whole new PS3 and stack of games. He ever get caught? I don't believe so. I'm not a cop, but I worked crime scene. This guy had attached GPS to the bottom of people's cars who owned houses he wanted to rob. He did it to ensure they wouldn't be showing up while he was ransacking the place. I heard about one person that pulled a shoplifting scam on a large, popular and well-known US retail store. They walked in with some cheap nylon product to get one of those "I walked in with this" stickers they used to put on returning merchandise. The sticker easily peeled off the product undamaged. They walked to the electronics department, grabbed an expensive box off the shelf and went to customer service. They placed the sticker on the big box and asked if they could return the item without a receipt. Unfortunately, no. Not without the original receipt. Dang it. And they walked out. Customer service even gave the doorman the thumbs up, having just interacted with the customer. This took place before widespread inventory controls and cameras absolutely everywhere. There's one guy I recently dealt with who is on parole. I stopped him in my city after he was looking to buy drugs. Usually people came from all over to buy drugs and then leave. I issue him a warning and let him go, as it's pretty common, and he sang like a bird regarding the people he was trying to buy from. Anyway, the next day, I got a call from his parole officer who says he was alerted the guy was pulled over and wanted to verify that it was his guy that I stopped. I'm a little confused at first, but it goes on to say that the day before he was scheduled to meet with him, but he had an excuse and bailed. His excuse was that he was in the hospital. Well, when he spoke with him the following day, he was able to provide documentation that he had entered the hospital day 1 and had left day 2. Well, I had stopped him at 11 in the morning, and after looking at the picture, it was 100% him. Turns out the guy had checked in, then out of the hospital on day 1, then in and out again on day 2. He then rearranged half the paperwork to make it look like he was in the hospital overnight, which would make my car stop on him appear like I mixed him up with someone else, as well as give him a valid excuse to miss their meeting. Not sure what's gonna happen to the guy, but I thought he was pretty clever. This was in the late 90s, early zeros. A guy in my dorm came to school solely to deal drugs. He took student loans, registered for a bunch of 300-person freshman server courses where he would never be missed, then literally never went to class. All he did was go to raves and concerts and keggers and sell party drugs. After the first semester, he was suspended. He wrote the usual "I was young and dumb and in over my head" sob story and got put on probation for a semester, so he had a repeat of the fall. At the end of the year, he was kicked out and didn't care. He made something in the order of $150,000 in return for about $8,000 in student loans to cover a year of housing and tuition. So far as I know, he was never caught. It may have been a short-sighted maneuver in the long run, but in the short run, it seemed fairly genius to effectively use federal loans to start your drug business. Working in home improvement store when younger, this guy came in, went to the snowblowers, took one and went to the return desk. Said he wanted to return it but had no receipt. They told him, you need a receipt, so he says, okay, I'll be back, and wheels it off to the car through the front door. He did this a few times apparently. Couple places even helped him load it back into his car. Not a cop, but I was a party once and some people were doing drugs. There was also some military guys who really didn't like drugs and called the cops to the party. About 5-6 cops arrive and say they can smell marijuana and want to search the place and people. Host notices how the police are moving towards the backyard where people had been smoking. Host jumps out the window and comes in front the backyard screaming, "I'm high as kite!" As if Host didn't notice the cops. All the cops grab Host and take Host towards the door. Host is still acting as Host has smoked more pot than Snoop Dogg, jumping around and shit. People look at Host as if Host is insane. Guests try talking to Host and Host's like, "Yeah, sorry, I'm super drunk and smoked a ton. Can you lock the door when you get everyone else out?" Everyone else doing drugs has noticed what's going on and run out the back. Cops feel like this was victory enough and leaves with Host. No one else is arrested. Host comes back a few hours later. Host has been released. Host don't do drugs. Edit. Got another one about Host. Host at a party in the woods. Cops arrive somehow and are moving towards where people have been smoking seconds ago. Some girl is afraid and says, "Someone do something." Host runs up to the cop car, pukes all over the front of it and falls over mumbling, "I need insulin, please help." Cops throw Host into the car, drive Host home with sirens, gives Host insulin and leaves Host in bed. Host comes back with a taxi, 40 minutes later, with more beer. What a legend. Most of them are really stupid, so this guy isn't a criminal mastermind, but here goes. He wanted to rob a jeweler's on our city's main street, so he found out the flat beside the jeweler's was empty and he hid there. For 2 weeks he triggered the alarm on purpose several times a night. Massive headache for the police and the business. We turned up to see nothing there, nothing on cameras, thought it was just a fluke, so the jewelers turned off the alarm system and said they'd wait until the morning to get a new one installed, or that one rewired because something wasn't right. As soon as he heard that and the police leaving, he tore down the wall. He'd already been working on this apparently, and robbed the place taking his sweet time. Escaped without anyone noticing anything for hours, until the jewelers came back in the morning. Then he tried to resell something he stole, which had a serial number on it, and got caught. So not that smart after all. Good effort though. Worked at a jail. After getting off work, I watched an ex-inmate homeless being released. He walked over to a patrol car, looked me in the eye and then elbowed the window in. He was walked back to the entrance and rebooked in. It was middle of January. He didn't want to get too cold. Not only does he stay warm through the winter, he's also provided with 3 hot meals and a bed. I would do the same if I found myself homeless and jobless. Reminds me of a family friend of mine, very fun Australian with an absolute horrendous bogan accent. Well, late 80s he's driving through Texas and runs a red light, and is immediately pulled over by a 250-pound Texan police officer with an equally horrendous accent. The way the story goes, this man is obviously not the brightest chap. So our friend, when asked about running the red light, gets very apologetic and explains that he gets easily confused because in Australia, you know, now things are reversed down there. Red means go and green means stop. The cop actually let this man go with a warning. I did not know that. Well, in America, red means stop, so don't make this mistake again. So yeah, not the brightest cop. One guy would print barcodes, bring them into Home Depot and stick them on merchandise in the $100 range. When scanned, the items would come up around the $10 range. Putting random barcodes on things isn't really legal and super hard to notice. Guy 2 would come in an hour later and buy the underpriced stuff. Completely plausible deniability. They would then sell the stuff on eBay. Only reason they got caught is because the guy with the barcode printer/software cut the second guy out of the operation, so guy 2 stole a bunch of barcodes, put them on the merchandise and paid for it immediately afterwards. He then proceeded to rat on the first guy and spilled the beans. They had been doing this on a weekly basis for over 4 years. Because we could only pin the one case on him, the burglar was dropped down to petty theft and he walked away with a few days in county and a small fine. Dude probably took Home Depot for tens of thousands over the years.